All right, so we can start, I guess.
Yep.
All right, Robert, who is present, do you have any questions about the HDF? Quincy, I think, has all the answers, so we don't ask
Hey,
Quincy
no,
for any
don't drag me
questions.
into this.
All right, okay. So, any questions about HDF by anyone who is present?
Not yet.
You
No
want me
worries.
to ask questions? I can ask questions.
Okay, ask questions. Participant, attendee, Quincy. Yes.
No, it's okay.
All right. Well,
Hello.
and Elena too. Hi, Elena. Okay, so I think the last month I was kind of talking about waiting for some things to be actually completed. And one of them was this switch in the read-only S3 driver and so I'm going to talk about that now because it did happen. And it's been work done by our own Jordan Henderson. And I'm mentioning his name because he's now present. If he's not, I would be claiming that work. But now that he's here, I cannot. So there goes my opportunity to promote myself. So what happened? When read-only S3 driver was created, which I think would be the late 2017, give or take. What was done at that time was essentially the code to interact with the S3 API or with the S3 Cloud Object Store was custom developed in the company. And that thing stayed until maybe a couple of weeks ago. And during that time, it worked well for what was intended. However, we started having issues with it. Most of them having to deal with not just interacting with S3, but all the other customizations and expected functionality that other tools that work with S3 were starting to have. Specifically, we had issue of supporting AWS environmental variables, because that was one way how people would supply their access or secret keys or security tokens in some cases, or even the regions and all the other things that AWS environment variables have. So that was something that we in the company would have to somehow, again, custom design and custom build. And then also we started having, with the longer sessions working with S3, we started having failures in the library. We were not sure exactly why would they fail, because tens of thousands of the S3 requests to the same HDF file were working before, and then suddenly the library would say, cannot synchronize or something, whatever was the error messages of the library. And so what happened in those cases sometimes was that S3 APIs can, at some point, or S3 requests can fail. They're not guaranteed to return a response every time. In other words, the expected response. So there are some other responses that the S3 API can give. And because our custom code was not designed for all these possibilities, it would basically report an error. Whereas the error was not the right answer, the right answer would be, okay, let me understand what it means. And then maybe if it's a non-fatal, I can retry or do something else that the S3 API is telling me. So that was another reason why we decided to switch. And the last one was this specific library, first of all, was written in C, or as they say, C99. Second of all, so it was obviously well matched to be included in the HDF5 library in one way or the other. And also has some capabilities of multi-threading in itself, and also some advanced features of actually monitoring in real time the throughput and reacting to it let's call it quote unquote intelligently. Now, I don't know if we are able to reuse all of these things because the documentation, it's a real developer's library, so documentation is like slim. But we expect over time that increase, but maybe, you know, we'll find something useful. But definitely what happened is that it allowed us to sort of deal with AWS environment variable support immediately, and also being intelligent about the S3 responses, also dealing with them intelligently. So we're very happy that we were able to find the funding opportunity to actually do this work. Including, now that we're doing all this, we also added the long time desirable support for S3 URIs. So people who work with S3, they usually use S3 URIs as the way to reference S3 objects. The ROS3 VFD still available. This, what I'm talking about now is in the develop branch of the HDF library. So still available in releases ROS3 driver. Only works with HTTP based links. So that for a lot of people, that was like awkward and strange because not many people actually know what's the actual HTTP link for the S3 object. So we are now having that support for S3 URIs as well. So a lot has happened that I think makes both HDF library and the HDF tools appear to be more relaxed, I would say, and more attuned to working with S3 than before. And so I will, there was some question, no? Oh, not yet, okay. So I'll share my screen. So what did I do? So this morning, I basically built the HDF library from the latest version in the develop branch, whatever that commit is exactly. And how I built it using CMake user preset. So a couple of months ago, I talked about CMake presets and how that's now available to build the library with. And what you're looking here is my specific user CMake preset file that I have on my laptop called CMake user presets.json. And what I did, basically, I said, I'm going to import from the library zone CMake presets.json that's now in the develop branch. So I import and include everything there, which is a lot, which makes my preset file very simple. And then I basically said, I named my preset, and I said, okay, my preset is going to inherit all the settings from the following presets in this file, in the CMake presets.json file. And so the CLang, because I'm on the Mac, so I'm using CLang. I'm building the release of the library. I want to use standard compression, which means the zlib, deflate, and szip filters support. And I want to build ROS3 VFD. And then when I said I'm inheriting, then I said, okay, I have to change some of the variables, CMake variables, because I don't want certain things. And what I didn't want is I didn't want to build documentation in this case. I didn't want to build examples. And I also wanted, when it comes to the deflate compression filter, I actually wanted to build a library with the zlibng library instead of the standard zlib library. And so I ran this preset of mine with CMake, and it built the library. And so what I'm showing now is essentially that version of the library. So what we got with the with these things now, I'm going to show obviously my my typical. Oh, wait a second. First, obviously, H5 dump. Oops, no, wrong one. So we are talking about at least nominally 2.00, but this is developed branch, of course. So I want just to show you the the original H5 dump. This was, for example, dump that you would have to have with some command lines, and then you had to say, I want to use ROS3 driver. And then you say, I want to use page buffer of, well, that's a lot of values here. Well, okay, let's go with it and see how it goes. And then you would use HTTP style link, as I said before. So this still works, but now we are using, obviously, the AWS C library, and there comes the output of the file. It's all good now. Now we can support the S3, and I will remove some things here so I can show them later. And just let me delete this as well. So basically the same thing, but this time I'm using S3 URI instead of HTTPS. And we should be getting some output. There we go. What is still not available, but I'm hoping that by the time of 2.0 release will fix, is that I want to remove these two command line options. So if I'm using S3 URI, I want that the library does not need me to tell that I want to use it ROS3 driver. Because at least for the tools, for the HDF5 library tools. Yes, Elena.
I thought that it's already there, because if ROS3 is registered with H5 dump, at least we updated for some other driver for encryption, it kind of automatically finds it, no?
I don't know if it, well, let me see. I can remove it now and we'll see what happens.
And maybe I should speak to that one, Alexander.
Go.
Because that's something that we added for the Deos project, even though at the time it was kind of poorly motivated and we're not using it. But if you are, that would be good to know, because I've been thinking very recently about removing it.
So yes, without me saying file driver, it didn't know what to do with this thing.
I see, because we did it I did it for encryption. I just needed to, I added, but it was very easy to add. Yes.
I think, Elena, the ROS3 specifically, I have a to-do comment to implement, the automatically finding it. But that feature is kind of causing us a few problems at the moment. And so maybe we might want to discuss and decide if you guys are using that, we should figure out how to deal with it.
So what I did, I just modified the code. So added encryption VFD, and it worked like magic. It was 2 lines fixed. I was able to do it. So that's why I'm saying it's easy. Okay, no, it's very handy for when you develop new file driver that it's automatically recognize it. It's really a nice feature. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Amen to that. Anything automatically recognized is good. Again, so what I'm trying now and hoping that we'll find the opportunities to do it, but so to remove the ROS3 driver specification if I'm using S3, because it's now clear, no ambiguity here, that it is an S3 object, so we should use ROS3 VFD. And also the page buffer thing, which right now, again, has to be set to non-zero. That would be also nice to go away or be some default. That's already in the pipeline, so work has not started, but hopefully it'll happen. So without these two things, if you think you can remove them, essentially H5 dump command now becomes very familiar and much more like what you would expect to use if this file was in a file system. And that's hopefully the end goal, that the users really the real promise of HDF5 library, that you can change the backend, and so don't have to really know that much about it if you want to use HDF5 data that really comes to fruition a bit more. And so now in this case, see if I got it right. So now we're going to get the output as well. So all good there. Now, what did we get with this new Amazon C-S3 library? Well, Jordan added a bunch of environment variables that now make logging information much more accessible. I worked with a few teams and people in the last 12 months or so regarding cloud optimized HDF files. And one of the biggest obstacles for them was to visualize by themselves the changes that the cloud versus non-cloud optimized HDF file, the same file, but the one cloud optimized, one non-cloud optimized, how much they impact the amount of S3 requests. And previously, well, at least all the releases so far, require that someone rebuilds the library by changing source code of ROS3 driver. And that was a non-starter for 99.99% of people I interacted with. And so I ended up having to generate these logs for them, and that was much more slower and complicated. Now, with the work that Jordan did, we now have all these environment variables that are allowing one to get this output without touching the library, basically. And so we have two environment variables that enable debug information, and one that basically says where the debug information should go. And the first one is the one that I mostly use, and I can show the output. The other one is really for the connoisseurs of the output, of the logging information, because you can get a lot more detail, and I'll show how that looks like. And the third one essentially tells you that instead of a default file, which is this file in the current directory, you can direct this log output to whatever file people want, user wants. So using this one, we can, for example, and I think I can probably pull from my history. I'm more a pro, so I don't have to do it much. So here is the command. Oops, that's not the one. Yes, this is the command. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this library saying debug on, because anything that is not false, off, or 0 will trigger debug output. And then I probably should delete this. That's too much. And then I'm calling again h5 dump. And now I'm only redirecting the output. So the typical output of h5 dump, I don't want to have it on the screen. And I'm only capturing the standard error output, which is the debug information, and I'm piping it into one window in my editor. So when this thing, so now you basically what you're looking at is a sort of the captured output from the library. For some reason, recognize this YAML, which ain't. And so you can see this is the sort of the more standard debug that you can get. First of all, the library tells you, okay, this is a S3 scheme, so that recognize the S3 URI, got the host, recognize the path, all those good things, the bucket, all that information is good. And now it starts showing the requests. And now we have a head request. We're basically required, so we learn of the file size of this S3 object. And then you can see now everything. Here is the request headers up to where is it? Up to here, and then we have response headers, and they are probably going to end up somewhere about here. And you can see there's a lot of info, but somewhere along this one, here is the important information for a lot of the users that I talked about previously who wanted login information, and that is the S3 GET request. Where in that file and how many bytes were requested to be read from that file. And so now there is one head request that basically says, give me the file size, and we get the file size. I saw it somewhere. We get it here. That's the file size. And then comes the GET request. This GET request is also a very characteristic one, because we now know that a couple of versions ago, we added capability of ROS3 driver to read first 16 MB of the file and cache it on file open. So this is basically that caching request for first 16 MB of the file. And then if this is all it's needed, that's great. But now we see there's another request somewhere further into the file for another file page, because what we're using is a cloud optimized HDFI file, which it means it's using the file paging. There's a longer term, but I'm trying to shorten it. And so out of these two requests, we basically got all the necessary information, and the output is out. Here's the user agent. I'm also glad that we have now a specific user agent for the library. Hopefully the logging tools and everything else, or whenever we are doing it, this would nicely differentiate what was the agent, user agent, in this case, HDF5 library, that made a request. And we also now want to differentiate between what was the VFD. And in this case, obviously, it was ROS3, but we also have ability that we use vol. So we could have here vol, and then it would be a vol identifier, whatever that is. And the rest basically just says that we're also using the AWS C-S3 library. So that is the more standard debug output that I think will satisfy a lot of people, at least. Now, if you're really, really curious, and you want to see much more, I can give you much more. We'll find that by using the other environment variable, which is the log level. And it is here. This is the variable log level. And it has the ability to say error, info, debug, trace. I chose trace because why not? And now in this case, I'm not going to capture the output. I just let it go in the terminal, but I'll show you what happens. So what is shown here is the typical output from H5 dump. But as I said, using this variable actually sends its output to a file, and the default value is HDF5 ROS3 VFD.log file. And we are going to look for that file somewhere, and yes, it is here. And now you can see this is the trace log output from, which includes the Amazon library and our own library, ROS3. Is it so? Is all this is only the Amazon library, Jordan?
This is all just from the Amazon library, and it'll print out.
So this only switches. Okay, so this only switches the Amazon library, and then as you can see all kinds of things. But I already noticed here what I mentioned at the beginning, processing of AWS environment variables. So it basically is now starting to think about, oh, there's default, there is a profile. I'm using default because none was given. Here is the file I'm getting information from. So all these nice things that otherwise we will have to do for them ourselves. And then, you know, everything
it also
else.
shows the it'll show the HTTP request like right there, which was really handy because you can see the like the hashed form of the signing keys it's using and the host it's trying to connect to. That was pretty handy.
Yes, right. Yeah, you mean here?
Yeah, that whole open section in the lines,
No, it's
then
very
you get
useful.
a bunch of stuff about all the internal multi-threading it's doing, which is kind of irrelevant.
There's event loop and all this thing. Yeah. So as I said, the switching to this library was really, really long time needed, and I'm glad that, as I said, we find the right moment to do it, and it was funded, which is even better. So all good, and also thanks to Jordan, who really very quickly implemented this switch. And so this is the output. Obviously, I could change the environment variable to send to another file and all that stuff, but you know, you get the point. And that's basically all I have. I can't think of anything else. Jordan, if you think of something, remind me.
And I have.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. I went.
Oh, no, it's fine. So very nice. Just historical comment. The initial thing was created as really a prototype, so it was expected that it would be improved. Thinking about along the lines, not of debugging, but more performance improvements, have you guys thought about caching metadata on the local disk? It's especially helpful if you access the same file all the time. And you may update, so cache metadata pages on the local disk and then feed those requests, not going to S3 to satisfy metadata requests. Because, for example, H5 dump, it really what it does, it goes through, when it builds a table of all objects to print the data header information, it really traverses all files to find all metadata. So something like this probably will be very useful, especially since now you already kind of introduced page delocation and modified, optimized files. Just a thought. I don't know how difficult it will be to do, but I think it will really increase the performance.
So page buffer cache, when on 0, essentially is in-memory caching of the 5 pages.
Actually, you can cache it on the local disk, and
Yeah, you can.
Page,
yes.
Because pages will contain also raw data, right? But I'm talking about caching on local disk metadata. For example, user does H5 dump on different objects in the file, right? So that probably will increase performance. Once again, I don't know. I just a thought.
No, fair question. A lot of the use cases are that essentially you are in some kind of compute environment when there is no local file system, like a Lambda function or some other resource in the cloud. That basically there is no cloud, there is no file system to be talked of. So there is, or that file system will go away,
right?
As soon as.
So an option like you have, like, because you are on local computer, right? And you're accessing, you're searching from through the files that are on S3.
Yes, we have right now. I don't think we have ability to store it on the local file system, because again, mostly I'm not sure how often people come to the same file, and that would basically would really prove to be a game changer, because it basically, with Cloud Optimized, with page aggregated files, typically what you kind of are done with as far as metadata is it's one request. That's why we did 16 megabytes on file open only on very large files or more complex files that you have to kind of have maybe a page, another page with the internal metadata. And that tends to be quite satisfactory in terms of performance. So that, yeah, but it's good to know that essentially we could at least do some work to store these pages for later reuse on the file system as well.
One thing that also strikes me as a good idea is possibly setting the library's metadata block size to match the page buffer page size to give a better chance of making sure you're collecting all of your file metadata into basically like 1 or 2 pages.
Right.
Well, that's, you know better than me then, because all I know is with the page buffer non-zero, you're kind of putting these pages, okay, there can be metadata pages and raw pages or data pages, if you will. And then how they're managed, I think they're equally managed in terms no one keeps the metadata page specifically because they're more useful than the data page or something like that. I think they're given the same treatment. Or maybe not. There are two parameters that you can set, I think. Which one you want to keep more. But yes, I mean, anything that helps reducing S3 requests, it would be good. The other, sorry.
Oh, no, definitely caching will help when you're accessing the same file multiple times, absolutely. So, yeah.
And yeah, so that's all I have really, unless more questions and things like that.
Alexander, just so
Yeah.
I have this straight, this completely replaces curl for the ROS 3 driver.
Yes.
Okay. What about on the vol connector side? That still requires curl. Is that correct?
Depends on the vol, but I would assume that some vols are using curl. Yes.
Okay, but as far as the ROS 3 driver, we no longer have to build curl into it.
No, because this AWS library is essentially includes several other modules. One of them is their own custom HTTP client.
Yes, and the benefit here is it's pure C, and it's a really good match for the HDF 5 core library there. So that's very nice. Okay, glad I have that straight. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, so I also mentioned, so we are very happy that this library actually exists as a package in bunch of package repositories. So building it is not really required unless you really want to, obviously. But that was also something we took into account when we were thinking which one to actually use. There was another one we liked, but that one didn't have availability in these package repositories. And we said, well, probably people would get annoyed if we burden them with building the library and another thing that the library would need. And so we said, let's go with something that already is. And the features, I really think that this library really, as far as working with S3 and all that, really is a good choice.
Yes, no, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, for people who are listening maybe later, I just want to announce we will have a session at the ECIP summer meeting next month, July 23rd. The next ECIP summer meeting is in Seattle. The title of the session is HDF 2.0 Cloud Optimized from the Start. And we are now gathering some ideas about the presentations and talks there, but it'll happen. It's going to be 4 to 5:30 Pacific time. And hopefully some people may join, or later they provide YouTube videos. So I may highlight that YouTube video later and some of my monthly
Alexander,
sessions.
What are the dates of the ECIP?
The week of July 20 or 21st, whatever is the Monday.
Oh, okay.
Of that week.
And you do not know on which day
Our session is July 23rd.
Oh, 23rd. So can I present, or if I decide, or remotely? Or
yes, you can, but you just you need to let know the organizer.
Okay.
About what you plan to present.
And you are the organizer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So officially, unless I get an email from you, just verbal is not enough, Elena.
No, but the thing is that I will be in San Francisco, so it will be easy for me to present on 23rd. Yes. Oh, no, I'm flying on 23rd. Sorry, bummer. Okay.
Well, if you have someone else or you want to pre-record, that's another option.
Okay, I will talk offline. Thank you for letting me know. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. All right. With that, I would say that's it from me until next month.
All right. Thanks, Alexander and Jordan. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you.
Bye.